Every once in a while, a lens comes along that's pretty darn exciting, and the update to the Sony 7200 f4 falls into that category, in my opinion. Now, usually an updated lens, all right, it's going to be a little sharper, check. Maybe they made it a little bit lighter, a little more compact, check and check. But we got a couple of other upgrades with this lens that really sweeten the deal. Now, I'll be honest with you, I was a fan of the original. I took it to New Zealand years ago. And yeah, it wasn't that sharp, but it was so travel friendly. It covered a great focal length that's useful for everything from portraits to a little bit of wildlife and especially landscape. I'm a big fan of using telephoto lenses for landscapes to pull those mountains in close to you. So I'm coming into this review with a little bit of positive bias, but quite frankly, I'm very impressed with what Sony has done here, and I'm going to break it down with 12 things you need to know about the Sony 7200 f4 G OSS Mark II lens. This video is brought to you by Squarespace. I run my own website on the Squarespace platform and found it so easy to build a customized website and so easy to add content. You can try Squarespace out for free for 14 days. No credit card required. Start at squarespace.com/photorectv to save 10% when you do go to buy. It's more compact. Here you can see the old and the new, noticeably more compact, enough so that in the camera bag, I can now drop this in vertically, and that makes a big difference in what I can fit in the bag. It's also lighter. Sony claims 15% lighter than the original. My kitchen scale gives me 1,048 grams or 2 pounds 5 ounces for the original. The new one weighs in at 939 grams or 2 pounds 1 ounce. Now that's not a big difference. That's not 15%. I can get closer to that 15% when you weigh them naked. Almost half of that weight savings comes from the reduced collar, which brings me to one of my few complaints about this lens. They didn't do that nice integrated Arca Swiss collar like Sigma does. So you've got this thing of beauty and you got to slap on an ugly plate. Now, honestly, I shot most of the time without the collar as you see it here. It really isn't a big deal. The lens doesn't weigh very much. It's balanced nicely. It's not front heavy. So I didn't have any worries with it mounted on the tripod via the camera. Another thing to know, it's got more switches than the original, including a lock switch that locks it only at 70 millimeters. It has a full-time DMF switch. DMF stands for direct manual focus, which when on means you can autofocus, but then use the focus ring to make some fine-tuning adjustments. This is often very useful in macro when your depth of field is so very narrow and maybe autofocus almost nailed your subject, but you want to tweak it to get those antennas in. That allows you to make that quick adjustment. And on the focus limiter switch, you have a macro category. That's right. You had a clue a moment ago. Now it's in your face. This lens can do macro. But hang on, we've got one more switch to update. You now have 3 modes of image stabilization. 1, standard, 2 for panning with action, and 3 is for your more erratic moving subjects. It's really mostly helpful for framing, keeping the viewfinder steady more than anything, because you should be at fast enough shutter speeds with erratic moving subjects that you aren't using IS. I'd love to know, if you have a lens with it, do you ever use mode 3 on your lens? And take a second to thumbs this video up if you find it helpful. Now, on to the fact that this lens does macro. Technically, it's half macro across the range. I find it quite impressive and massively improved over the original. Here's a shot of some flowers. This is as close as I could get with the original. And now here's what I did with the new 7200. And look at this shot. I thought I was just taking some pretty flower photos, and this guy was just hiding there, waiting for a chance to grab the lens from me, publish it on YouTube, and break the NDA. I heard he has a very popular YouTube channel. Now, you can actually get true macro when you add a 2x teleconverter. I only had the 1.4 with me, and that's what I used to capture that shot. But wait, what did I just say? Yes, this lens is now compatible with Sony's 1.4 and 2x teleconverters. One of the questions I get often asked from our workshop participants, our workshops cover a huge variety of locations and subjects, and the versatility of being able to bring a 70-200, but then sometimes when you need a little more reach, throw on a teleconverter is often desired. And now we have a good answer. I have a good answer for many of our guests. So using the 1.4 teleconverter, you get a 98-280 5.6 lens. And with the 2x teleconverter, it becomes a 140 to 400 millimeter f8 lens. Now, a 140 millimeter f8 lens isn't very exciting, but a very sharp 400 millimeter f8 Well, with the current sensors from Sony able to handle high ISOs, and it's all in this small and lightweight of a package, well, that is nice and adds some versatility. Plus the fact that you can do true macro with a 2x teleconverter or close to it with the 1.4 just again makes this lens that much more versatile. You know what else is versatile? Squarespace, the sponsor of this video. You start with one of their visually stunning templates and easily add your own content with drag and drop ease. Their new Fluid engine allows easy customization of every detail. And Squarespace provides so much more than just a website. You can sell your work in the online store. I found their e-commerce tools to be so straightforward and easy to set up. You can also schedule appointments for online sessions or in person or even workshops. And of course, many of you watching this are photographers. Their portfolio and gallery system is so easy to work with and allows you to display your beautiful photographs and video the way you want. And you can have password protected galleries too to share with your clients. Check them out, squarespace.com for a free trial. And when you're ready to go, start at squarespace.com/PhotorecTV to save 10% off your first purchase, including a domain. They make it so easy to get a domain name. One other thing to consider when we're talking about these teleconverters and shooting with larger megapixel cameras that many of us are using these days, many have a very usable crop mode. So combine a 1.4 teleconverter plus the 1.5 crop mode, and you now have an effective 147 to 420 millimeter lens, or the 140 to 400 becomes a 210 to 600 millimeter lens. That's some impressive reach and a very compact package. Now note, the original 70-200 was an internal zoom lens. The new one has a telescoping design, and when I'm reviewing a lens that offers that or has that as part of the build, I usually take a moment to point out that this could make the lens more susceptible to dust. But I realize that my 100 to 400 from Sony that I've owned for over 5 years and carried around the world with me in some very dusty locations is still spotless inside. So I really wouldn't worry about that with well-built, well-weather-sealed lenses, as many of Sony lenses are. And it is weather-sealed, and overall build quality is excellent, very nice fit and finish. One note, another note, lots of notes. The new lens hood is a pedal design. The old one is more like my 100 to 400. I actually prefer the old one a little bit more. When you put it down, it's just a little bit more stable. You can put it down and stand the camera and lens up, but you just need to be a little bit more careful on uneven ground. Something to keep in mind. Internally, the design is updated to reduce focus breathing in video use and reduce focus shifting while zooming. You now have 4 XD linear motors inside for 20% faster autofocus performance. I saw snappy and reliable autofocus in all of my use, and I really only tested the old 70-200 when I was comparing image quality, and I did see that hunt a little bit in low contrast times, and the 70-200 new 70-200 did not do that at all. It also now supports AF tracking while zooming. And of course, it supports the 30 frames per second when you're using it on the A1. Filter size is 72 millimeters. I recommend these fantastic magnetic filters from Maven. I'll put a link right down below. Most importantly, image quality. It's excellent, noticeably better than the original. I tested from f4 up to f8, and I could immediately tell in each example which lens I was looking at, and it didn't matter if I was looking in the center or the corners. I've got a few more examples that you can find at this link right down below, but I feel confident in saying that this is an exceptionally sharp lens, not only among Sony's lenses, but across brands in this range. I'm also happy to say I don't see any signs of chromatic aberration. The bright edges, high contrast zones, all really clean in these shots. And bokeh, I think it looks great. You know, an f4 lens, it's not going to produce amazing fall off, but looks pretty soft back there. f4 at 200 millimeters. All right, we can start to wrap this up. At the time that I'm recording this, that you're watching me sit here, I wasn't provided exact pricing or release date. I had to record now before a family vacation, so I'm just going to put those on the screen from future Toby. But I can say that overall, I find this to be an excellent lens. It's a compact, travel-friendly, versatile focal length, teleconverter compatible, macro possible lens that I've got no real complaints about, except, you know, the tripod collar, lens hood. Those are really minor. My other comment, though, that I want to be in your brain is this is a crowded space, especially when you start to look around at other lenses in this range. Earlier this spring, I returned from an Italy workshop where I used the Tamron 35-150 f2 to f2.8. Now, it's not nearly as travel friendly, but it was very good. I loved that focal range. And no, it doesn't do macro, but I loved having a 35mm f2 lens and a 150mm f2.8 with me. But I want to stress that it was a very heavy lens. You pay for that fast aperture in weight and bulk, but it's an option and it's going to be in a similar price point. You also have the Tamron 70-180 f2.8 that is just as travel friendly, but obviously at the expense of some range and sharpness, but you gain an f2.8 lens. So it's nice to have options. That's what I'm saying. I'd love to know which lens you'd go for, which lens you think Sony should update next. It's 9 years. We've had this guy for almost a decade. You're going to find them used for decent amounts right now, and I still think it's a decent buy if you're looking for a lightweight, travel-friendly lens in that f4 category. As always, thanks so much for watching. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button along with the little bell to be notified of future videos. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.